Welcome back, everybody. I want, as a quick reminder to everyone, we are live streaming this and we archive it back at mediapost.com. If you have any friends back at the home office you want to ping, they can tune in and go to the front page of mediapost.com, and there'll be links to the agenda page for this event. And there you'll see our live blogging and also the live stream. And sometime later today or tomorrow morning, the videos from today will be archived back at the agenda, so you can always go back and refer to them. We wanted to sort of get down to examples. We've been talking, the theme of the show is convergence and fragmentation, but how does that really work out in actual media plans? How are these channels panning out as people are actually planning and buying media? What impact are they seeing? And what do the plans look like now? So this panel, talking out of example, is being led by an old friend of ours, Robert Aho, who is the partner at BrabenderCox. He is BrabenderCox is one of the leading agencies in DC. We know Rob from many years at our annual political marketing event that we do in January. He's also a veteran of this summit. He has done plans and helped campaigns from Vice President Mike Pence to Tom Coburn to the entire alphabet soup of the Republican Party, NRSC, NRCC, Rob Aho.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction, and yes, I apologize for last September and October, but it won't happen again until next year, so take comfort, please. What I would love to do is, since I've already been introduced, is just ask the panelists here. Larene, why don't we start with you? Just name, agency, kind of what your background is and what the agency is all about right now.
Hi, I'm Larene Mantel. I am the Director of Advanced TV at Cadreon, which is IPG's programmatic ad tech unit. So we're really focused on all data-driven video.
Hi, I'm Jesse Math. I'm VP of OTT and paid social at PMX Agency, now known as ForwardPMX. Still getting used to that. We are a performance marketing agency, digital only, so coming at this space from that angle. Performance to us means changing behavior. So we look at the living room screen and audiences across all screens as an effective mechanism for doing just that.
Hi, I'm Sean McCormick. I'm a Senior Media Director at Harmelin Media. We are a full-service media buying agency based out of Philadelphia. My personal background is direct response, but for the last 6 years I've been doing mainly account management for Harmelin.
Great, thank you. Well, welcome. I should have recorded our pre-seminar call because I actually think that was a really solid jumping off point, so I kind of want to recreate it now if I could. Sean, can you take us?
As an agency working with clients is, I think the big thing is you have a lot of traditional clients that run television, and they feel a little uncomfortable when you talk about data targeting and moving away from, 50% in prime and running, all over, not necessarily a demo. So the challenge from our aspect is to try to get the clients to look at it as a video plan, not necessarily a linear television plan versus a programmatic video plan, and try to look at it holistically. I think that's the main challenge that we face on the client side. I think internally we have challenges where we're siloed to an extent, right? So we have our digital team, we have our linear team, and I think a lot of people have this problem: who handles what, and how do you divvy up the video versus the television?
Are you finding there's a common set of questions from clients as you try to have that conversation? Like, let's make this a video plan and not a TV plan?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny. An example is, when people run their linear television plan, they have specific day parts and all that, and we try to take that away and say, let's run, programmatically with television or data optimized. They get nervous. They want to know exactly where they're running when it comes to linear TV, which is funny to me because when you run a programmatic video campaign digitally, they could care less where you're running for the most part. You're running all over the place, but when you're on linear TV, all of a sudden they have to know exactly where you're running. I think that's a conversation we have often. It's hard to kind of get them away from that.
So it's audience first, but program first and then audience first.
Right, yeah, right.
Jesse?
Yeah, we don't touch linear budgets. So, when we talk to clients about what we do from an OTT perspective, they're generally like, "Oh, what? Like you could do that?" And from a content perspective, we talked about this before. we kind of see the other side of the story, whereas you know, in our digital buys, our advertisers are obsessive about brand safety, for example. You know, OTT, because of that more premium environment, we get a little bit more of carte blanche. You know, we had an advertiser run on CNN on Sling. I saw the spot myself, and it was in a segment about Jeff Bezos's anatomy, and you know, the advertiser was like, "This is exactly where we want to be. This is perfect." You know, so definitely a different side of the coin.
Oh boy. All right, let's move on. Larene, can you tell us, because I know your perspective, kind of the common currency, you're doing both linear and digital as well at your shop?
Yes. So we have similar strategies to what John was talking about, where it's really an audience-first strategy. So we're kind of flipping the script to what we were the past panel was talking about, where you're basing your base buy and doing all that, your upfront buying, your GRPs, content, and then placing your audience buys. We're flipping that a little bit and making the foundation really about the audience, and then putting in traditional media on top of that, just to build incremental reach off of an audience, but making that like really the center of your plan. But to what John said too, it is interesting because with linear TV specifically, clients are very traditional in that they're used to seeing a schedule. They're used to seeing, okay, I'm going to see my spot at 8:05, and this is us. And that's not really how the data-driven strategy really works. Is where we're trying to get them to understand that regardless of where you're airing, network, daypart agnostic, platform agnostic even, as long as you're reaching that right person, it shouldn't matter.
Okay, good perspective. All right, now comes the hard part, guys. This is where we actually have to do what we've been asked to do, which is kind of pop the hood on some specific plans. And I will tell you this, because I work in politics, this is an easy thing for me to ask. We can just leave the client names out of it, right? If you want to. But are there any specific kind of cross-screen plans that you guys have done recently at your shop that it's like, hey, this is really cool, I wish I had thought of that sooner, or wow, that seemed like such a great idea and what a bust it ended up being? Does anybody want to take the first crack at that?
Sure. So we most recently had a CPG client, a beauty client, that didn't have a traditional TV plan. So they came to us and wanted to say, we have a very specific audience that we're trying to reach. We don't really have anything in place as a base plan to build incremental reach off of. How do we build that media mix? And what we did was really create a strategic target. So not just an age, sex demo, but actually adding those filters, whether it's like they live in this area, they like dogs, they purchased this in the past, using all sorts of different data sets. And then understanding where do those audiences consume the media, and then basing our media allocation mix off of that. One hiccup that kind of came into that was because all those different platforms, whether it's addressable, linear, OTT, some online video, they're all kind of on a different currency, right? So we had to try to talk to the client and the agency partners as well about looking at this more on an effective CPM and based on impressions. So taking that GRP away and kind of creating a flat, like, similar currency across everything.
I'm just curious, I want to tease that out a little bit. Do people's eyes glaze over on the client side for you when you start to kind of get into that conversation of like, we really need a common currency here? I mean, do they understand, and do they appreciate the drive for that? Or is it like, just figure it out, let me know how we do?
Yeah, I think it varies. A lot of different clients have different understandings and different education. So that's a lot of what we do at Cadreon too, is helping to educate both our agency partners as well as our clients on thinking a little bit differently and innovating a little bit, moving with the industry and the way that it's going. I think that on our side too, it's also hard because I think the last panelist talked a little bit about this, was planning tools. So even if we get them to understand that and they're okay with that effective CPM as the base of their currency for the plan, we might not have the planning tools exactly running that way. So how exactly do you put addressable TV into a reach curve? You know, things like that. OTT, what's the best like touch point to look at that? Is it just YouTube? Is it Facebook? You know, like, so there's a lot of different things that I think we all have to catch up to.
Totally, yeah. I mean, as a performance digital agency, it's a really different world for us. We consider, if this is TV for a digital first world, measurement should be digital. So at the risk of
Tell us how you really feel, please.
At the risk of being booed out of here as, you know, a heretic and a fraud, I don't honestly I care about scale, but I don't care about reach and frequency measurement. I care about outcomes, and that's how we're measuring, and so our plans are fluid, right? And the optimizations are based on outcomes. And some of the things we are able to measure as real digital outcomes, we're talking site visitation, foot traffic, footfall, on-site conversion rates. Other times and other things that are a little bit more tricky and all that, we are taking like a geo-saturation approach and measuring lift at a market level. And marketing mix becomes the vehicle for driving the most lift that you can get. But, you know, to us, talking about 95% completion rates and viewability rates in an OTT world, you know, that's table stakes, right? We're seeing path to conversion that includes, hey, someone visited my site through search, was retargeted through 10 display ads, saw a video ad on a TV screen, and then went back through brand search as the kind of experience that we're trying to deliver for clients.
Right, I think you have to, you know, each client's different, right? You manage expectations, but I think also it's looking at our media metrics and then, you know, matching them up with business goals and actual metrics, and how do you kind of bridge the gap there? And that's kind of tough, I think, especially when some clients don't want to share data. You know, others are a little better at it, but you know, if you have a client that'll share their CRM, share their sales data, it's easier to kind of bridge that. But you know, some clients are protective over their data, and you got to kind of guess for the most part.
That's always fun, right?
Totally.
Yeah,
I think that the role of the digital display planner today has shifted from managing different ad tech partners like it was, you know, 3 to 5 years ago, really understanding what's the right partner that can deliver on this goal, and it's really become a data planning game. So to answer your question more directly about planning, you know, and implementing media plans, it's how can we create a unified audience strategy that's at the core for us of performance plans. So that can be first, second, third-party data. And digital to us today, because everything that we're activating on is through a programmatic lens, and therefore, not everything, but we prefer programmatic lenses because that helps with data, that helps with measurement today, that also helps keep costs down to make it more cost-effective in a more direct response model. But it's also being applied across, right, digital display in my title is being applied across connected TV screens, desktop and mobile, digital out of home, programmatic audio, or video on programmatic audio platforms.
Yeah, I think that the attribution, the attribution is funny. I think to what the panel I think touched on last was, you know, you have your direct response or your attribution metrics, but then I think someone asked about what about top of the funnel, and it's really like, can that be both, or does it have to be one or the other, right? Does television or video have to be an awareness tactic or a response driver, or can it be both at the same time?
And especially if you're tying it back to the ultimate, who cares about how many points or CPMs or whatever 3-letter acronym you want? if you're driving sales or votes or, you know, anything that tie back to the business goals, that's ultimately how we should be measured, right? Okay, I want to move on here just real quick, but I'm not going to let you guys off the hook yet. I want to hear specific media plans. I do want to get into what I think would be really cool, like some of the, you know, some of the tools, maybe it's software or just other tools that you guys are using to help you talk through with clients and determine, you know, where do you put the budget? Where do the dollars actually allocate themselves based on whatever data or tools you have? But before we go there, can we talk some specifics? Can you guys take us a run through?
I think I could give kind of a specific. It's a little, I think, unique as far as, you know, we use the data optimized television platform for our one client, right? It's a retail client, mostly in Walmart. The issue was, you know, they had to run television to get their shelf space on Walmart. They said, we want a Walmart tag spot, right? National TV. The problem is they didn't have budget for a national TV spot, and their competitor spends about 10 times as much on national TV. So what we did is we kind of created a data optimized plan and said, hey, let's take your money and be smarter with it, right? Because you're not going to beat out your competitor 10 times. You're not going to exist, right? So let's have a smart buy and be targeted on television. And what we did is we pulled, MRI, which is pretty basic stuff, right? And said, let's target these specific, and we created a targeting segment, right? And said, we're gonna take your dollars, we're gonna make them work harder for you and hit the spots that we think your competitor probably isn't, although it's not gonna be a really high impact buy. You're gonna follow, hopefully, the strategic target and the CPM is gonna be a little higher, but you're hitting the right people, hopefully, at the end of the day. And I think it was successful. Sales were good.
How recent was this, just so we know?
It's actually ongoing now, and we've done it for the past 2 years. More recently, we've paired it with a network buy, mostly because we got a little bit more budget, and because of the, this is another battle we have internally with them. They said, hey, we're not seeing our spot during, NBA games, right? And it's like, well, you only have so much to work with here. That's not the point, but, if the Walmart buyer wants to see it during, an NCAA game or whatever, I think we have to cater to the client sometimes with that. But from our standpoint, we delivered all the impressions. I mean, they were concerned about impressions. They can go back to the Walmart buyer and say, "It's our national buy. We delivered 100 million impressions," right? And that's what their ultimate goal was. So it was more about optics, but we felt we hit the right eyeballs, not necessarily the most eyeballs.
That's pretty cool. All right, any other thoughts on plans before we move on? Because I do want to make sure we have enough time to talk about, how do you guys actually allocate for screens? Like, how do you go through that process? How do you walk the client side through it? And what kind of tools are you finding that are actually helpful, and which ones aren't?
So I'll do that question then. All right. So
no linear. Next question.
Yeah. It's data planning for us, and so we have direct private marketplace deals directly with publishers whenever possible, and we're applying data sets again programmatically to reach them across all screens. I'm a performance marketer who wants to pay, right? I don't believe in the traditional digital direct response model that has netted out with, $5 under CPMs for bad inventory, bad ad experiences. I just fundamentally believe in the power of sight, sound, and motion, 100% share of screen, et cetera, to change behavior, right? To make customers who aren't currently your customers become your customers. I don't understand how a 300 by 250 on dictionary.com can do that. I'm sorry if anyone from dictionary.com is here today.
They're a sponsor.
I do think that I think that the line, therefore, between investing in upper funnel and performance programs is more blurred than ever. I guarantee even the EA team understands the return of investment on that upper funnel investment. If you look at the best, the campaigns of the year, the award winnings every year, the end of the case study always ends in, and revenue increased 6% year over year. So if just doing the right thing for the consumer is the thing that drives performance, well, then performance marketing needs to be able to do that as long as it is measurable and data-driven. I feel like I didn't answer your question at all, but
no, but that was riveting nonetheless. Yeah. So what tools are you using?
No, so again, the problem is there are not good tools. Between YouTube, online video, and connected TV, and then furthermore, like video on demand and other things that have digital or programmatic connection points, there is no good way to plan across it. So where do you start for each individual brief? Should I do YouTube first? Should I do online video first? Should I do Sling first? I don't know if that's a really super answerable question today. And once you have your media mix, how much do you have to do of each before you move on to the next? You could spend millions on YouTube and probably not be enough, right? With billions of hours of video being consumed and uploaded daily. So again, it becomes that media mix modeling, that what's driving outcomes for me. And I care about audience and inventory. I don't really care about screen as much. So I'm happy to let my buys run across TV screens, desktop and mobile, as long as it's that inventory, that audience that my D2C advertisers couldn't get through a linear budget.
And I think it's tool-wise for us, at least, it usually still starts at MRI and maybe ComScore, and if the client has a CRM, use that and just try to find a target, and then you just go from there. I don't personally know of any other tools. I mean, Eve here from our digital team might know, but for us, it just starts with the research team and then try to narrow down on who we want to hit.
For us at Cadreon, it's really a proprietary tool because it's not really out there. We've developed our own proprietary data stack that can take in clients' first-party data if they're willing to share it, but we also have third-party data like MRI, Simmons, ComScore online data as well. So we're really taking that all in to really inform our plan. And we are outcome-driven, so we're looking to see how that affects a business goal for that client. But I think, to your point about reach and frequency, what we're trying to do is we're still planning on reach and frequency, but we're starting to create these algorithms and noticing what does a specific reach and frequency, how does that deliver on a sales goal? So that it's about the end outcome, but you still have your media metrics on the front end as well to help inform that outcome.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I know from my perch in the political and the public affairs arena, one of the biggest complaints that I would have about my little piece of the world is that we're very, very poor at looking back and learning from the last campaign, not just political campaign, but the last ad campaign. And I think it's probably, at least in the political vertical, it's inherent because you're literally breaking apart these small businesses that are political campaigns. It's a $10 or $20 million small business that is organized for 18 months. And then it implodes, win or lose, it implodes, and everybody goes their separate ways, and it gets recreated in other worlds in the next 2 years. So that doesn't necessarily offer a really good opportunity for us to do some soul searching post-campaign, because everybody's, frankly, worrying about their next gig, right? So I'm just curious, from the non-political perspective, how much do you use the learning from the last campaign to drive the next campaign, and is that dangerous?
We try. It depends. The metrics out there are wishy-washy, right? Like, we have these benchmarking goals, right? You go off these industry benchmarking goals, but if that doesn't result in sales and you're hitting your benchmark, then what does that mean, right? It doesn't really mean anything. So we constantly try to look back at previous campaigns and test and optimize and learn and keep it moving forward. But it's tough because everything is different. Every metric that you measure, like the benchmarking goals, your cost per completed views, you're not sure what the worth of that is until you can match it up with sales data, and I think that's tough to do sometimes.
I kind of almost disagree, because I think in linear, because you're not getting that feedback loop as real time as you are in digital, a lot of it is that what we're doing is looking back on a past campaign and understanding, okay, now that we've run this cross-channel campaign that included addressable, it included OTT, included regular linear, and then also programmatic linear, what did that deliver on the outcomes, and how do we optimize that for the next campaign? And I think it's also kind of hard for linear because those results might not come back in real time. And so it's 6-8 weeks after the campaign's already done, and that's when I'm getting that measurement and that business outcome back. So that's where that's only at that time is the only time that I can now optimize a future campaign.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's also super important when looking back not to fall for false positives or false negatives. I've had clients who tested and said Facebook doesn't work. Media can't be the question and the answer, right? So when you look back, the learnings have to be about channel and vehicle, as well as creative, as well as audience, as well as product and site experience as well.
I loved the presentation I think we all did from Electronic Arts earlier, and it made me want to ask you guys the question, as planners and buyers, do you love being driven in some moments by a piece of creative that literally can determine how you want to take the media plan? Does that happen more and more in today's day and age? As there's more and more screens in the homes, as we consume video a lot differently than we used to 10 years ago? How does creative impact what you do with your plans?
I think it's, you know, it's a significant impact and a little bit of a struggle sometimes because you have so many options, right? And we know that the creative is super important, and you have to have customizable creative for each one of these options, whether it's mobile, linear TV, you know, bumper ads, all that stuff. So, you know, if you have all of those available, I think it really helps a campaign. But, you know, in the real world, you know, we don't have that all the time. So I think we're getting there, and I think, you know, we work with creative agencies, right? So we don't have a creative team in-house. So I think we've seen them kind of adjust a little more, whereas before it's like you get one creative, it's 30, and you just got to do it. You know, this is what we have. But now I think you're seeing 6-second ads and things like that that are, you know, customized for the content, and it's more of a natural experience.
But media is driving that, right? It's not being driven by creative.
Yeah, I think it's usually media first, then creative, at least from our standpoint.
Again, I think it works both ways. I think that there are times where there is a message that needs to go out, and we need to craft a plan to get it out. But also, brands that have really good creative can be a roadblock to brands that have good enough creative. I've had brands not want to get into the OTT space because they said that it would need to be a Super Bowl level production for them to play in that space. And there is also good enough, right? Like, not every TV spot is unbelievable either, right?
Really?
You're welcome.
I think that it's interesting to see how creative and media are starting to work together. For us, we're seeing a lot of clients that have multiple messages or multiple products within their lines of business that have different audiences that they want to speak to. So starting to build different audiences and serving them each individual creative, so dynamic creative, in both linear TV as well as programmatically. Looking at addressable and the capabilities and the technology that's advanced there, so you're able to really pinpoint a specific household and say, okay, you're going to get the Clorox message, but the household next to you is going to get a Revlon message or whatever it might be. So I think that's becoming very cool, and understanding how the audience dictates what creative they get.
Yeah, and I think you know, going back to the Spotify presentation where, you know, people hate ads, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't think they do if it's relevant to them, right? If it's good creative and it assesses a need, I don't think they do hate them, right? It's just the clutter that they have to get through to find something that's relevant is the problem.
Good perspective. So for those of us, I think it's probably fair to say that to some varying degrees we're screen agnostic in our planning approach here, right? Probably not all at the same hardcore level of agnosticism. But I'm curious, you know, as we're kind of in that brave new frontier, where does that philosophy break down in your media planning? Where does it start to fall apart? Because, you know, I think I'll be the first one to say it today, but not all impressions are the same, right? And we'll probably hear that 30 more times throughout the next couple of days. But so this is not a foolproof method. And how do we get around it from your perspectives?
Well, you do have to diversify. I mean, so my challenge then is, you know, if I want to deliver these great experiences, how much am I paying for it, right? And CPM does ultimately matter, and what you're paying for matters. So even, you know, on Facebook you're paying for a 2-second view. On YouTube you're paying for probably 15 seconds. And on an OTT you're paying for 15 or 30, right? Because your completion rate's going to be there. And so now we're almost talking about like the 1990s TV planning model, where how much, like, OTT is kind of like prime for digital, right? Where you're going to be paying more for it. No TV plan ever consisted of only prime. So how much of each do you need now to actually make an efficient, targeted buy? And, you know, the big question for me is, what is the value of a spot in user-generated content versus a spot in Modern Family versus a spot, you know, in between 2 paragraphs of an article? If you are reaching that audience, I do believe that there is a difference and that there is value, whether it's performance-oriented or brand association, which in the end is performance-oriented, to being in premium environments. I think we're very far away from actually quantifying how much.
Any other thoughts on that?
I think for me, a lot of where the plan breaks down in Screen Agnostic, we've sold them in on, oh, this is great, the audience is at the center, we're going to touch them at any time. It's sometimes it still gets down to that cost at the end of the day, and they see that number and they're like, well, actually, that's really expensive. So they're like, we need to think about this again, and it's helping them and finding ways to resell a business outcome, to your point. So even though it is more expensive, it's premium. What does that mean in terms of business outcome?
Yeah, I think like where's the most efficient way to hit the eyeballs, right? It's, for our one client, we had a cross-screen campaign going on locally, local news stations, and then cross-screen their affiliate websites. And when we realized we could hit those same people more effectively with just a traditional digital video buy. So, we just added cross-screen in there just to say, hey, we're going to try it. But really, we just hit them. We're going to hit those same people more efficiently, then that's what we did. So we ended up, canceling out the cross-screen portion of that, running linear TV and digital video instead.
I would say it's also really important as buyers, or if you're a client, to hold your buyers accountable to what you are buying, right? A lot of connected TV or OTT can be things, not that there's anything wrong with it, but, the fail nations of the world, the cat, 24/7 cats, my personal favorite, but maybe not where all my brands want to be, So, I think it's very important to maintain transparency in your buys in terms of owning those relationships yourself and knowing exactly what you're buying, what you're paying for it, and where it's going, because there are a lot of options out there that is relatively long tail, and again, there's value to all of it. But we shouldn't fool ourselves in terms of what we're buying just because we are on TV screens.
Really good points. So I'm going to open this up for questions, I think, Steve, if that's okay with you. Really good perspectives up here. It does kind of feel like, in large part, especially on the connected TV OTT world, we're kind of laying the tracks right before the freight train gets to it, and then pulling the tracks that we just ran on and putting those in front too. So really good perspective from all three of you. Thank you.
So hey, it's Josh Martin again from Performix. Just a quick question and more comment, I guess. But you guys referenced reach frequency, and I think it was Jesse that mentioned he doesn't factor that in to a great detail. But if you're thinking about a sales cycle or something that requires immediacy, let's say a hurry up sale, doesn't reach and frequency become so paramount to get that message out in a very quick way, in a significant way? And I think reach is paramount from that perspective.
Yeah, I care about scale for sure, and it will vary by industry. I mean, I have CPG clients that have household reach goals, so not to discount that, but I would rather have strong delivery against an in-market data set that I've tested into. So a lot of the post-campaign learnings that we have are, across data providers and data sets and audience, and which one we are seeing those post-exposure metrics from. But I care less about how many households did I reach necessarily, and more about, hey, I have, a multi-million household audience that's in market for back-to-school supplies. Am I delivering strongly against that in-market audience, and are we seeing outcomes from that?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. I mean, I think it's great to have reach and even scale, but are you converting those people, right? Are you hitting the right people? So I think that's probably the most important.
My friend might disagree, actually. So.
And I think that's also a difficulty, right? Because of managing reach frequency. So even if you've been able to do this and you have a cross-screen plan, are you overexposing that audience because they've seen it on linear and they've seen it 7 times on OTT within the same program? So starting to make all of that work together and harmonize is also difficult to figure out.
I guess a follow-up with that, you guys were talking and Robert was mentioning pitfalls and successes. I guess if you plan against the wrong audience in your environment, that could really lead to bad plans and bad business results, I imagine.
Yeah. No, I'm very conscious of not guessing wrong also, and so by maintaining control, by trading internally, and I also should caveat, like, there is a time and a place for not buying programmatically everything, right, through private marketplaces, but the tools that we use internally allow us to diversify audiences, measure and optimize without overpaying for it. So I totally agree. Don't guess and don't guess wrong, but whether that applies to a single audience set, third-party data set, or your persona that's based off of loosey-goosey, third-party data, that risk exists in all channels and all of media.
Yeah, I think you'd be shocked at how many times in the political space the wrong audience is bought. And it's never acknowledged that they are targeting the wrong audience with the wrong creative, and they're just throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars down that rabbit hole. But anyway, I digress.
I think we try to lean on our clients for that as well. At least we do. It's like, if we think this is the right audience, but you guys know best for the most part. You have a CRM, give us the data that you have. I think that's important.
Yeah. That's why I can't wait, honestly, for the further decline of the upfronts. I mean, I want to commit I want to commit, I don't eat shrimp, but things like Google Preferred and things like that and YouTube, I want to maintain flexibility to understand what's working and to shift. There's room to make deals across a portfolio of clients. It doesn't have to be TV oriented. We have them with the likes of, Meredith and Conde. You can have deals of volume and scale. But I don't want to lock my dollars into a certain thing, a certain audience, or a certain inventory source without, that inflates my cost potentially and removes my flexibility to optimize.
Jesse wins the Summit Most Likely to Kill TV award.
My background is in TV planning.
You'll take it.
Any other questions, or should we wrap here, Steve?
We're going to wrap and move this over to the round table at the end of the morning. But Rob, panel, thanks very much. That was very good.